Hi, all. Thanks for your patience. We had a few glitches with Zoom, but we're back in action here, and we're ready to start a webinar today. I'm Rick Satcher. I'm the commercialization director for MTech. It's a pleasure to have you all joining us today for the second in a three-part series with Grant Engine. Today, talking about planning and executing long-term non-dilutive funding strategies. Got a lot of topics to cover on it. Presentation will be available in the members only site after this. And with that, I'm going to introduce Sam Tetlow and June Wang to present today. Thank you. Go ahead, Sam.
Right. Well, it's good to see everybody that's on video, and thanks everyone for joining. We definitely, as Rick mentioned, we've had a lot to cover, and want to extend a thanks to Rick and the broader MTech team for your partnership and collaboration. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everyone can see that. Let me know if not. June, can you give me a thumbs up if everyone can see that? Um, yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to start by saying, I'm really privileged and honored to be the one presenting. We've got a lot of hot topics to cover today. And really the insights, the broader capability comes from the broader Grant Engine team. We've got a lot of the team on this call today, and many more that are not on the call but are really here. And um, we hear consistently from our clients, from objective consultants, that we've got the most talented team in this space, and that it's a great experience to work with them. So if you've not had that occasion to do that, please reach out to us. We're here to really support you. And this webinar is just another example of that. So I'm going to dive in. We've got a pretty good agenda here, and it's hard. We'll start with a funding update in the current environment, and it's somewhat hard to believe that it's been 37 days since the inauguration, and a lot's happened since then, and we're going to hit the highlights, but more important, what we believe it means for you, and even more important, what to do in the future, given that landscape. We're then going to go into how to find opportunities within MedTech, the DoD, and more broadly, and then really dive in on some long-term funding strategies. If we have time, we'll do a little background on Grant Engine. So fundamentally, I'll do a couple of just intros for those of you that don't know Grant Engine. We have been in business for over 9 years. This is our 10th year anniversary in October. When we had the meeting last January, we were at 73 people. Since that time, when I say last January, I mean about a month ago, we've added 4 top-tier members of the team, and so our team is growing and expanding. And fundamentally, Grant Engine is in this business to save lives, right? That top line that you see on the slide is our bottom line, and that's why we do that, the work that we do. And we're really here to help clients like you, help our partners get product in market to improve the standard of care. And that's a fundamental mission that drives our values, that drives our ethos of how we operate. The benefits of non-dilutive funding, if you're not very familiar with them, are profound. There is no better ROI than spending a little bit amount of money to get $2 to $3 million in funding that's non-dilutive, and that can be 10 million, it can be 20 plus million in many cases. So that's just a fundamental reason to do that. Validation matters, and that validation is useful for other agencies that you want to secure funding from, but also equity investors. Everything takes a long time in our world, and grant funding can be as fast and sometimes faster than raising equity. And then the act of writing down your grant fundamentally enables your success. So why don't we, Tracy, do the first poll so we've got a number of polls that we're going to be doing to just take a pulse, and we want to just get those results as we go, and these will be meaningful. We'll come back to these in a moment. So if everyone can fill out those poll responses, we'll see those answers as we go. So to the heart of the matter, or at least the first heart of the matter, this is really an update, and on our blog post, we've got February 24th. You'll see the next slide, the latest update for the recent government events that have gone on. And so that'll be what's going on. And then we'll talk about what does that mean for you? And then how do we react to grow your business with federal funding? So this next slide is pretty chock full of items. And it is as of last night, with a lot of the key things that happened in the House of Representatives, but it's really going to be a summary of everything that's happened in the last few weeks. So January 27th, Trump issued a directive, the Trump administration issued a directive to freeze, and then 3 days later unfroze that for grant funding. Concurrently, there was a fork in the road email that went out through the Office of Personnel Management to about 2 million federal employees. 75,000 people accepted that offer. And then about a week, just over a week later, a federal judge blocked that fork in the road resignation offer. So this theme of things happening and then the courts getting involved will continue here as the slide progresses. This next one is this next block of 3 bullets is a very meaningful one. And it really does set I would say a pillar in the house that is getting built in our future. That's a proverbial house, not the literal one. And what happened last on the 20th of February, last Thursday, is the Senate passed 2 bills that was trying to troubleshoot what they really wanted, which was one super bill. And in that bill, there was additions of cost for border security, military spending, extending tax cuts, and then also asking for a federal budget reduction of about $1.5 trillion, which when you do the math against the total federal budget is about 22.5% of the total. Yesterday, by a very narrow margin, the House of Representatives passed that super bill that the Senate originally wanted, that includes a call for 2 trillion cuts in budget. And so that's why we put that first poll up there, which is how much do you think the federal budget is going to get cut? And Tracy, or I don't know if you're running the poll. I cannot see those poll results. If that's a way to, there we go. Thank you so much. So this is interesting, and we'll come back to that poll. If everyone can see those results as we go, that's a very interesting census or viewpoint, and it absolutely aligns with what we see in the future here at Grand Engine. So we'll come back to that on the next slide, but that's interesting to note. As well, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the chief of the Navy both got replaced essentially at the same time. That combinations never happened. The changes are not very uncommon, but what that signifies in the military is that there are changes coming, for sure. And that happened earlier this week. So that's the executive branch and the legislative branch's actions that have happened. And I think this call for cuts is something that is writing on the wall. That still needs to become law, and then it needs to actually happen. But I think we can see cuts happening, and we need to plan accordingly. We meaning we meaning us at Grand Engine, and we've got a very clear plan inside Grand Engine for how to address this. And we want you to be a part of that. We want you to have your own plan as well, because cuts are coming. At the federal agency level, the NIH, with a new political appointee as its head, took a proactive action on their own, where they stated that the indirect rate for agencies is going to go from whatever it's negotiated down to 15%. That was a proactive directive that the NIH issued from the agency, not from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or from Capitol Hill. Pretty quickly, 22 states initiated litigation against that. And as early as the 21st of February, a judge upheld that block so essentially stopped that indirect rate negotiation at the state level. It's not exactly clear who has authority here, at least to me, at the state versus the federal level, because it's ultimately federal money. But that's being battled, I think is fair to say. There have also been layoffs at the NIH, 6%, mostly people that were there for 12 months or less. And the NSF has laid off about 10% of the staff. It's not been reported anything at the DoD, but I would imagine some of these federal employees up at the top took that request. As well at the agency level, it's more clear and visible what's happening at the NIH than it is inside the DoD. And it does appear study sections are continuing, but moving to virtual, not in person. Some of those study sections, the day before they're supposed to be held, have stopped them. So that is very much a fluid situation. And NIH council meetings have essentially been canceled. And there hasn't been a meeting yet this calendar year. And there's a meeting notice date that is supposed to happen 15 days. The administration asked that to now be 35. They're now looking at doing that without following the federal registration. So there's a lot of moving parts there, and that's sure to continue to be dynamic. And it does appear DoD grants are continuing to be held. So I'll get to the questions here as we go. And Gavin, I'll get to your question on 15%. I think I just want to say before I get off this slide is that it is a very dynamic environment and things are changing, right? Almost on an hourly basis, and certainly on a day-to-day basis. And so that's, I think how things are going to play out, who has authority, what's going to end up being the reality. I don't know that answer definitively. Neither does the Trump administration, neither does Congress. It's a very volatile and very turbulent environment. And we know what that feels like if you're going through that. And we know what that dynamic can mean for planning internally for you and what actions do you take. So Gavin, your question is a very good one. It's really important to recognize that we don't know if a cut is going to come. The ad hoc poll that we have had on this webinar here, most of the people think it's going to be a 20 to 30% cut. And I personally believe that the federal agencies that provide federal funding for grants that you go after, we go after, that we collectively want to pursue is going to get cut. And I think what that means is that the implications of that are really on the dynamic of putting together quality submissions. So let me get to this next slide here as we go. So the next slide is around, is money still flowing? And this is from a Nature chart, and we've backed this up with our own data. And what this chart looks at, you can Google this paper, and in the slides it's hyperlinked. But this slide looks at, this is a chart from this article that, again, we've looked at on our own data. It looks at funding flows for both number of projects that have been awarded and dollars that have been awarded at the NIH, paired by the first 3 weeks of the year, and then the 4 to 6 weeks of the calendar year in 25 versus 24 versus 23. And you can see in the first 3 weeks of the year, the money flowed pretty consistently as it had in previous years. But in the last 3 weeks, from weeks 4 to 6 of the calendar year, it's quite a bit down. The blue are new projects awarded, the red are existing projects awarded, same thing for dollars. And you compare the blue bar here in 4 weeks in 25 to the blue bar in 4 to 6 weeks in 24, it's down, right? So money is still flowing, but it is down. And the um, the the dynamic here is that I think we're starting to see the noise and this unclear adjudication starting to impact some of the activities. So let me get to a couple of the questions. The Federal Registrar is, my understanding is that is about council meetings, not just study sections. And so that is how it's about. The Federal Registrar, to answer your question, is about council meetings, not study section meetings. Study section, of course, is the peer review that happens. Council is where they actually approve grants. And then, so Eric, I'm gonna need, if you can help, I'm gonna try and keep going through the slides. Eric, if you can send those comments like you have to me personally in capital letters, I can action that. So yeah, the study sections have tried to block this through executive action, and institutes, and we'll get to this here in a moment, institutes have taken it on their own to try to get around that. So this is the ins and outs, the dynamic nature of who has authority, what actions are happening. I think we see individual institutes taking action into their own hands and moving that forward. So what do we predict will be the result of the backlog of reviews that aren't being reviewed now, right, at the NIH relative to new applications? So there's a proverbial statement in that article where the NIH unnamed person that says there's a real challenge there, and you can use you can read the expletive that was quoted in the article. But in terms of handling the backlog, it is my belief, and this is an opinion, that the NIH suffers from the volatility like we all do, and they are going to work through every grant in their process in due course. That is my belief, and I think that's based on prudence, and that is not inappropriate. It would be inappropriate to just not review a grant. So I believe that's going to happen. And I believe that's going to happen in the backdrop of it being more competitive. And so we had a poll. So that, Teresa, that's my prediction. And again, everyone's got an opinion, but I think I think it would be difficult to see how the NIH just says, no, we're not going to review your grant. It's possible, but I just don't think that's a practical outcome. But I think what that means is it's going to be compressed. They're going to have to do more volume in a shorter amount of time, and that means it is going to be more competitive. That is my prediction, and I think we have to plan, by which I mean you, and I say this with empathy, respect, and honor. When I say this about you, I believe firmly that you need to plan for it being more competitive. And this next slide will talk about what do you do? What does that mean for me? And what do I do with my business? So yeah, our current grants that have still money left on them, still safe. The most, again, my opinion, and I think eminent domain by the United States government means they can do what they want if everyone aligns, and that happens. And in that backdrop, I do believe that grants that have already, I believe firmly that, and there's precedent for this, that grants that have been awarded that have multi-year projects where you got the first year award, but you haven't gotten the second or third year award, and that's still yet to come, or you got an award but only have drawn down half of it. So you got an award but only half of it is half of it is still yet to come in the door. Will they protect those funds, current award and future awards to come? My belief is that yes, that will happen. It's possible that they will cut, but I think if you use the analogy, the changing of the direction of the Titanic of the United States government takes time, and I believe that those will be honored. Yes. The question around, I'm just looking at comments here. Yep. Okay. No cost extensions. So yesterday, call it, no cost extensions. The first one you got were uber easy. You put in a note, and you got a yes within days, and you didn't have to really provide a reason. That has the landscape and the difficulty of getting those no cost extensions has gotten incrementally more difficult now than it did, call it yesterday. We've seen some guidance that no cost extensions will be more challenging. And that's not formal guidance, that's informal guidance. So I believe those will still happen, but my bet, and this is what I would count on, is that if you can not do them at this point, that's probably more prudent. And if you're going to do them, you be prepared for a more substantive buildup of those. Okay, we keep the questions coming. Those are great. And really helpful. And I think we've talked about, Eric, I think we hit that answer. Thanks for that question. I think on the backlog of reviews that aren't being reviewed now, I think those are going to happen, but it's just going to take some time. So this slide talks about what does this mean for you and what do you do about it? And whatever happens in the future, we don't know for sure. And I believe it is most prudent to plan for those cuts, as mentioned before. How much of those cuts going to be, no one knows. But the average goal of what's happened, if you take that somewhere between 1.5 trillion out of our total federal budget versus 2 trillion out of the total federal budget, the average goal is 22.5%. And if it's end up being 2 trillion, it's more like 30% reduction. So is the health aspects of the DoD, the NIH, the NSF health specs, are those going to be more or less than the average? We can argue about that, but I think it is prudent to plan on that coming down. And that coming down, a rule of thumb could be it's going to come down by 20%. And I'm not going to speculate on what I think it's going to be, but because no one knows, but the maxim of planning for the worst and executing on that model will improve your chances of success no matter what the outcome is. Yes, it could be more, but you had a game plan if it comes down significantly. If it's not cut, not as much, then you're in a better position. So I think that from a fiscal prudence, from a being ready for the cuts being there and impacting you, it's prudent to act on that and plan on it acting right now. So what that means for you, what that means for all of us, is that you've got to find more funding opportunities than before, right? That align with your product roadmap. That means that you need to pursue more quality submissions that will be competitive. You have to pursue more quality submissions that will be competitive. You need to leverage the funding that you've already contracted, right? That means starting to think about how you can use these relationships you've got with program officers inside the military, inside the NIH, to deepen that relationship that you have with them so that you are prepared for the next application and they're more on your side. They're more aligned with you. And maybe some of them lost their jobs last week. Maybe you have a new program officer. Maybe someone's playing backup. But those are important relationships. That's leveraging the funding you already have to build those relationships, deepen the relationships you have. And one dynamic in the military specifically that we've seen up until the last presidential election was the Defense Health Agency was more horizontal, across the board, where you saw activities, solicitations happen horizontally across the branches of the government versus branch specific, Navy, naval special warfare, right, et cetera. That were branch specific and then segments within the branch. So the question is, do you build relationships with the DHA or do you build them at the branch specific? And I think we've seen more in this administration and this activity at the federal agency level, and I think this is going to carry forward into the military of more branch specific activities versus DHA. And I don't know how that's going to play. So you can play that smartly by building relationships with a broad swath of folks. But I think branch specific aligns use cases and applications to your product and your company. So that I think if you're going to choose, I would choose branch versus DHA. Let me get to a couple more questions. We are definitely spending a lot of time on this, more than I thought, which is all good. And we've got the rest of the 2/3 of the agenda. John, on your direct costs, we'll cover that. I'll cover that as we go. After June goes. Why don't we do this? I'm going to turn it to June to talk about. So the first number 3, right? The first italicized bullet is find more funding. And we're going to talk about actually one more slide before we turn it over to June. So one reality is that the officials making these decisions are elected officials, right? Our congressmen and women, our current presidential administration, they are elected officials. You have a voice. This is predominantly your tax money at work, right? It's your money. It's your country. And your voice matters. And so advocacy also matters. I think being vocal to your congressmen and women, being vocal to the decision makers, which is by and large the executive branch, which means the White House and that staff, and then the agencies that fall under it, and the legislative branch, which means your Congress, your House of Representatives, and your Senate representative. They need to hear from you. And so this link, democracy.io, is an easy way to you put in your address and you can email them from that platform. It gives you the name, the contact information of those folks. We've got some thoughts around where we want to go, and it involves the SBIR program going from 3.5% to 5%. That is also called for in some of the pre-election planning from Project 2025. But you've got your message and what you want to say. That's a starting place for you to craft whatever you feel is appropriate. But this is a link to make it easy and more straightforward. So that's that is just a call to action for you to be vocal to your elected officials. So with that, again, back to this slide, finding is relevant and important. And there's lots of places to go find opportunities. So I'm really pleased to introduce June Gregg, recently married. And so that's why she goes by Greg. And so June, I can drive if you want. Yeah, just let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. It's my pleasure to meet you, everybody here. My name is June, and as a grant strategy and program manager at Grant Engine, I help our clients identify the best opportunity for your program and priorities, and also assess your competitiveness and fit for these opportunities, so you have the highest level of success. First off, where do we go look for these opportunities? In other words, who are the biggest funders for innovative R&D programs like yours? The federal agency is the biggest one. As the estimated amount of allocation last year was 200 billion. We're talking about health and human services, the CDC, NIH, BARDA, FDA, the new addition, ARPA-H, and then the DoD. MTech has done a great job facilitating military and private sector partnership, but official agencies and programs include CDMRP, DARPA, and Army Medical Research, Navy, Air Force, etc. And of course, we have the National Science Foundation. Next, Sam, please. Now, especially now, private foundations are instrumental for supporting innovative technology development as well. Just to name a few, there are many. We have CEPI here for Epidemic Preparedness Initiative. We have Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's research, Alzheimer's disease supporter, Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation. We have Colorectal Cancer Alliance. CARB is a major funder for antibiotic resistance bacteria that just put out a $5 million solicitation for gram-negative bacteria infections. Breakthrough T1D is for type 1 diabetes. And of course, Gates Foundation is a major player. Next, Sam, please. And then we have local programs for cancer companies in Texas. Cancer Prevention and Research Institute is a great source for support. CERN is focused on regenerative medicine in California. Massachusetts, and then Colorado, North Carolina, and Minnesota are just some of the states that provide support, additional support for small businesses in particular. Next, please. So where do we find these specific solicitations? First, luckily, all federal opportunities are published on grants.gov. Here is a look, like every search engines with appropriate filters and keywords, like funding, instrument type, grants versus cooperative agreement versus contracts, eligibility criteria, small business or not small, so small business or nonprofit, and also agencies. You'll be able to generate a list of relevant solicitations, and each of the solicitations has a link, and you can click into it for more information. Next, please. Take this as an example. It's the SBIR NIH Omnibus solicitation that runs reliably every year for 3 cycles. You can find informations like the ID of the solicitation, funding opportunity number. You can find the title and a general description that also give you information that are critical for your consideration. For example, here, clinical trial is not allowed, and it's specifically the Small Business Innovation Research Program. On the eligible applicants, only small businesses defined specifically by the Small Business Program Administration are eligible to apply. And then on the bottom of the page, you can find the link to additional information for the full solicitation guidance, including deadlines, award timelines, review timelines, award start date, review criteria, and what documents needs to be put in as a part of the proposal as well. Next, please. In comparison, this is a broad agency announcement released by the Department of Defense, the DoD, specifically Army Medical Research. You can see that the funding instrument type is wider. It includes also the cooperative agreement as well as contract. Eligible applicants include all entities, big or small, US-based or non-US based. And then on the top of the page, which is on the bottom right here, related documents. If you click on that, next, please, you can see a link to download a package of PDFs that includes all the informations. A lot of times, the solicitation has its own special requirement, and then there's a general instructions on applications as well. Next, please. Now, finally, private organizations publish their grant opportunities on the website under funding, call for proposals, grant opportunities, and similar. Of note, AmTech has done a great job releasing valuable grant opportunities throughout the year. So I recommend everybody to sign up for the newsletters of all relevant organizations to stay current. Because sometimes, a lot of times, the deadlines come fast and furious, and you need time to prepare. To emphasize the great opportunities AmTech release, there is one right now, a bridge loan available for application, and their annual yearly multi-topic solicitation has just closed. It is a great opportunity for, I think, this year, 14 to 15 topic areas, all very relevant to the DoD. And it's typically released later in the year or early next year. So definitely keep a lookout for that. Next, please. Now, once you find a solicitation that looks like a good fit, is it really, are you really competitive for it? In other words, is it really a worthwhile endeavor for your valuable resources, especially considering this climate, competitive climate? Here are some key considerations before you even put in the application we know to be important based on our success and experience. First, are you actually eligible for the solicitations? For example, small business seed program has multiple layers of criteria for small businesses based on ownership, the number of employees, the location. There's also PI requirement. And solicitations are separated from clinical trial allowed or not allowed. All of this potential mismatch can lead to administrative withdrawal, meaning that your proposal won't even get reviewed. So definitely pay attention to that. Second, focus area alignment. Are you truly aligned with the mission of the solicitation? Especially for strategic big funders, this is going to be critical. A lot of the DoD solicitations actually lay out the technology type readiness level and even target product profile and explicit metrics for you to refer to make sure that you are as close and as aligned as possible before you apply. And then third are the timeline and budget in alignment with the company's priorities. So I don't recommend, if you don't have all the materials prepared and collaborators lined up to apply for something that's due in a week. Also, a lot of the words don't come in till 6 to 9 months later, sometimes even a year. Plan well with your existing and current priorities, so that will actually help you in progressing your program. All these three considerations are fairly easy to analyze once you are aware of it. And they're generally clear in the full, sometimes 20, 100-page solicitations, but you can still find the information. I'd like to spend a little bit more time on the unwritten rules here. Preliminary data requirement is a big one. And different solicitations has a wide range of bars you need to meet. For strategic funders and big funders, this bar is often even higher. So communicating with the program contact and doing more research on previous awards is going to inform you better on this decision. Warfighter, and a lot of times warfighter support system relevance is going to be key for especially the DoD solicitations. And finally, but not least, networking and relationship building before a full application process and throughout is going to be key for you to close the deal. To give you an example, next please. Thank you. To give you an example, here is a rough flow chart for how to work with the DoD. So the middle line, if invited line, is when you actually start preparing the full proposal. Half the work, as you can see, is put in before the invitation even. That includes alignment between the company and the agency and solicitation. That needs to be established. Champions within the military needs to be in place. And agency meetings and presentations, pre-proposals and tech watch meetings needs to happen. And agency buy-in needs to be obtained before you are invited for the full application. And leadership, after the technical review, leadership review negotiation will happen before the actual award. In the interest of time, I won't be able to cover all of the tips specific to the agencies listed below the flowchart, but we're happy to share them with you after the presentation. Next, Sam, do we want to go to poll 3, or we have one more for BARDA, which is similar that we'll share similar with the.
Yeah, let's go to poll 3. Navigating the DoD. So thank you, June. Really helpful. I think as we think about what to do and how to handle this landscape, I think pursuing and finding more opportunities is number one on the list for you and for us. So there's been a number of questions that have come through. So I'm gonna try and address them quickly. So this is a question around the DoD. Okay, we're playing catch up. This question wanted to happen a little while ago, which is good. So if you can answer this question first, which is you can see that poll question that was at the lead in to June's portion of the talk. So I'm gonna answer a few questions while everyone's filling that poll out, and I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, roughly in the order they came down in the comments, and I'm going to put this slide back up as kind of a roadmap for us. Bear with me there. So some of the questions were, is these delay tactics from various vectors of the administration forcing the NIH to give money back? I don't know, but that's a pretty good strategy if you're trying to do that. So money going back to the NIH as it goes, coming back from the NIH, so their budget comes down. That could be a strategy, yes. But I think it's really going to depend more on fundamental, just budget at the end of the day. Will the direct costs be balanced by the will direct costs be balanced by the drop in indirect? And it's interesting, SBIR, if you're talking about SBIR funding versus non-SBIR funding at the NIH, in this topic. We believe that that is true. Yes, that if you had 100% of a budget, which is how the solicitations come out for the SBIR program versus the other programs, if you had 100% yesterday, it'll be 100% tomorrow. But if those indirect rates come down, that means there'll be more direct. So we do believe that that will balance, that the total will remain the same, but the mix will change to heavier direct versus indirect. Another clarifying question was around DHA versus branch specific. Is that going to happen? I cannot predict for certainty what's going to happen, whether in the military is the DHA, which has been in place to try and get horizontal efficiency, is that going to remain, or is it going to be branch specific? But I think we have seen momentum of things happening previously at the federal level, now happening at the state level. We've seen that with societal topics that are not related to grant funding. We've seen individual agencies take action that is contrary to the current presidential administration's directives, like the Doge, emails, right? Some Doge email comes out, agencies are saying, ignore it. And so I think this dynamic of individual agencies, individual branches taking more control versus that's being more horizontal, I think is a general trend that, the federalization, you could call it, is definitely happening. So that's the current outlook there. The SBIR program today is reauthorized every 3 years or so. And it calls for any federal agency that's over $100 million has to allocate 3.5% of that budget to a small business. It's 3.2 or so to the SBIR and the balance to the STTR. What our advocacy position is that the SBIR program drives innovation, job growth, company creation, innovation leadership on a company basis, innovation leadership on a country basis compared to others. It works, right? Of every dollar you spend in the total 7 trillion of the federal budget, money spent on the SBIR program, STTR, has the biggest impact. And therefore, in all of those things, that drives tax revenue as well. So our advocacy position at Grand Engine is, let's make that 5%, not 3.5%, because it works. ARPA-H. Renee was a political appointee who ran ARPA-H. She has been dismissed. Her counterpart, Joe, has been taken over. Susan, who we have a personal relationship with, left. She was the number 2 at ARPA-H. She's now, acting director of CDC. And so, things are dynamic at ARPA-H. We have a good, close relationship with a recent program manager that was just hired earlier in January. And so I think cuts are coming is the kind of writing on the wall, and I think ARPA-H won't be immune to that. But I do believe ARPA-H will persist as an organization. NIH, next question was NIH contracts versus grants. I think that's going to be directionally the same dynamic. Contracts are, they have a lot of ins and outs about them, but I think you can reasonably expect that contracts are going to save or experience that similar work. Stephen, you asked about project-based financing. I think that is an effective strategy in general, right? And I think it's an effective strategy today, tomorrow, just like it was yesterday. And to pull those projects off, you really need deep relationships, and it really needs to move forward in that way. So I'm just picking up the other questions that happened, and let me just bring it back up a level. We've got 3 other questions that I haven't really digested yet, and we are at 1:53 Eastern time, and we're going to end in about 7 minutes. And we've got a lot of content that we would have liked to walk through around actually long-term strategies. It's not surprising that the long-term, this topic of just the government state of play is on everyone's mind. It's great we're taking the right time to discuss that.
Sam, if you all don't have a hard stop at 2, we can go over a little bit.
Okay.
I do have a hard stop, so I will log off, but Tracy will stay on and you all can keep going if you're okay. Or if not, no worries. We'll try to move it into the third section.
Right on. Yeah, I'm respectful of everyone's time, and I would say we can. I'm gonna have to roll in about 20 minutes, but let's and we plan on this being an hour. So I think for those of you that have to leave in now 6 minutes, we will cover those topics around long-term funding strategies, and in our next webinar, and we'll go till about 2:15 Eastern time. The recording will be available for those of you that are MTech members. You can access that, which I think everyone is, and the slides will be made available as well. So they will be. We'll send out a post if you haven't registered already through Grant Engine. We'll get you from MTech through them. They'll send it, or we can go. So
And Sam, let me interrupt just for a second. And Tracy, go ahead and just post that. If you want to be contacted by Grant Engine, just go ahead and fill that out, and then we'll let you just run into the top of the hour as you see fit.
Yeah. I think so I'm going to try and answer a couple of questions and then just really show some highlights for the other topics. So I have not seen any on the tax section 174. I've not seen any IRS directives, but on that in recently since the last action that has happened. So I don't think there's any linkage to the indirect rate direction that NIH gave. Those things are not related. And so that is I think no new news on section 174. The recommendation of what are the top 1 to 2 websites that might serve as a clearinghouse for funding across US federal, we're going to call that US federal agencies, right? As opposed to US government state agencies or state bodies. The link and the page that June put up on the webinar of grants.gov and how to go do that is the place to go do. If you're looking at it by state, then you need to search by state of where to go. So that is that's the answer to that one. Let me just pivot. I'm gonna take this to just show all of the slides that we had. So what we've got here, and I'm gonna walk through these, but if you can see this, we have a few. So we walk through those pieces there of the agency. We've got 6 long-term funding strategies that have different plays within each of them. So I'm going to go through those quickly here in the next, I'll call it 10 minutes. That's not going to do them justice, but it will give you a sense of deeper strategies that you can play, over time within your portfolio. And here are the 6 and there are probably others, but these are 6 core strategies, and you can't do all of them. So maybe you pick one and think about, 1 or 2 and think about them, in your strategy for your company. And these take years, right, to enact. And you can be successful if you execute on them by executing on those strategies every single day, right? Success happens later because you do work, now. So the high level strategy here are the snowball effect. Start small, leads to medium-sized things, leads to bigger things, leads to potentially giant things. Collaborative, link in others that are luminaries in their field and leverage their experience mutually to secure awards and even corporate strategic partnerships. Being always one step ahead, which is use current funding to de-risk future funding. Platform tech, if you've got that kind of a company, go deep on one application and go after that one application. It's very deep, very focused, has collaborators, use cases, endpoints for that application that are relevant for that specific use case. Go get that award, and then do that again for a second vertical application. And that is a way to leverage your platform many, many times over. The NSF would be an exception where they are happy to have a true platform without a lot of specificity deep, but almost every other agency wants you to be deep first, get an award, go second application, go deep. The one in yellow is pretty straightforward. You're going to spend equity on something, get a grant for it, and that frees up equity as an unlock for you to go elsewhere. Virtuous circle is running the life cycle of getting grant funding, developing your product, getting in market, getting traction, and showing the funders, wherever they may be, that you are a good bet. So that is the executive summary of each of these six. And then each slide talks about each one. So we're at 2:00 right now. If there's no other questions, I'm going to spend a few minutes just walking through these, and the full slides will be available at Grant Engine's website on a landing page that we'll send out, and also through MTech. So there's no slides that are in this presentation that you will not have access to. You'll have access to everything. So I'm maybe in the interest of time, I'm going to really focus on the first two bullets of each of these, which is, I'm just really going to another level of detail on each of these, which is use a micro grant, use a tech transfer promotion, use a local award that's in your city or state, use a state-based award to get any traction, and then utilize that by screaming from the rooftops about how you've been a winner. It's about using small initial grants to establish credibility and then leveraging them for the future. It's generally easier to get an award from someone that knows you, that's local. And then that endorsement matter because everyone, including a reviewer, likes a winner. And that validation works at every level. And it's a great way to build something great, is to start small and continue to leverage that. And that step forward, not only whatever you do, however small or big, not only gets you that progress, you open up a door for the future. So if you think about how much effort it takes to take a small step or a medium-sized step, and the effort to go get a smaller award, you're not only getting that award, but you're opening yourself up to an award that could be 10 times that size. And so the value of that is not just getting the success, but getting closer to future success. You have time. You have time to work that whole process. And doing that in a methodical, thoughtful, high quality way consistently is a winning strategy. So that's this, that's the snowball effect. There's a reason why, think of yourself as a flywheel and you push on it, 10 times and it doesn't move. But on the 11th time, it moves a little bit. And then you push it, you keep pushing on that flywheel. Over time, that giant flywheel will move faster and faster. And then it's very difficult to slow down or get in the way. And so when challenges happen, you have momentum. So that's this strategy of start small, and grow over time. And remember, however hard it is, the benefits accrue, right? Not only for this one, but benefits accrue for the future. This next one is we've seen this very effective in NIH funding, NSF funding, certainly CARB-X, and I will say mandatory for the Department of Defense funding. And this is the strategy here. The play is you recruit and engage with rock stars whose voices matter. You are leveraging them to be aligned with your product. And this is also useful for building relationships at corporate partnerships, because they look to those thought leaders for validation. So you could say the military has 35 sub-segments within it. NIH, we know today, has 28 institute centers. The individuals, the luminaries that are in that field matter greatly. And it's easier to get in an NIH environment, company funding, if you have a rock star academic luminary who has podium power that is a part of your grant. They wrote a letter of support. Maybe they're a consultant, maybe they're a key personnel, because they're on that project. In the military, we see this consistently with creatives as a place to start, but also individuals that are champions for your project. I mean, that's one of the things June mentioned on that flow slide, is that you need champions in the military to have that get approved. I can't tell you the number of people that come to us and say, I was within a point or half a point on a CDMRP project, but I didn't get funded. And a lot of times, most of the time, that's because you weren't programmatically aligned, which is code for no one was advocating for you, or you weren't warfighter relevant enough in your submission. And so this, when you're speaking, think of your audience. When you're presenting an audience, when you're submitting a grant, you got to speak to that audience. And this strategy of finding collaborators and thought leaders that are noteworthy individuals that are objectively valuable in that specific space that you're playing in will be paid attention to by that funding agency that is in that specific space. What is this hard to do? Sure, everything's hard to do. And I can tell you from my personal experience that the act of picking up the phone and calling an academic luminary and building a relationship, and then when that's appropriate time, offering them to be a part of your grant application, and they'll get money for doing that, is among the easiest collaborative relationships to build and secure, right? These company pay lines in the military and in other agencies are among the best. And they're still hard, but it's much better than an academic grant. And so you're providing them a window of getting funding that otherwise would not be available to them, that generally speaking has an easier pay line. That's not to say it's easy, but relatively speaking, it can be easier. So those discussions can really yield fruit, and they'll provide insights and quality, substance to your application that will also improve the submission capability. Always staying one step ahead. So the well-structured grant delivers on its own aims and de-risks future funding. Really the concept here and really ethics matter here. So you need to be above board at all times. And this idea that you're using your current grant to generate preliminary data with an eye to what you're going to pursue in the future is a very effective strategy. And that progresses your product into the market or into the warfighter's hands so that they're either safer or they're going to have a chance of living when they otherwise might not have a chance of living. that's what everyone wants. That's what the funding agencies want and need. So this idea that you're going to use current grants to generate data and progress your program that will be a future application is an effective strategy. The relationship with the program officer is very important, and it is extremely helpful in getting slight changes in scope and slight elements that are all inside the lines, but it's something that can be very effective by virtue of that relationship and that strategy. So again, ethics matter above the board, but you want to use your current funding to go get the next funding and deliver on the aims that you propose on that current application. The platform play, I think we talked about that. I went a little bit deeper on the headline slide, so I'm not going to go into a lot more detail here. But I think hopefully that concept makes sense. The house rule that I will offer, and this comes from hard-earned experience from myself, from your team at Grant Engine, that this idea that you can just copy and paste the next application is a fool's errand. You need every application in a platform needs to be deep and substantive, and that's how companies win and win effectively. So go deep on one. If you're successful there, it still requires lift, but you've proven success once, and it's easier to get the next one if you have the first one. This strategy is also conceptually pretty straightforward, where you have a roadmap, you have equity funding to pay for it. But this approach unlocks dollars that would otherwise be spent, and that either extends your runway, which is great, or you can use that equity that you thought you were going to spend and use it to broaden your existing portfolio on the same runway. So this is a very attractive strategy, predominantly because, again, back to this topic we talked about at the top, where there's no better ROI than using a little bit amount of money, time, effort to go get non-dilutive funding. Again, non-dilutive funding does not dilute existing investors. There is a focus point that your board and investors will have, is like, well, you're focused on doing X on your lead program. Don't dilute your efforts by going after Y. And that's an excellent point, and obviously deserves to be honored and recognized. We see a strategy here of standing up a dedicated team inside your company, if that's the case, to go after it, whether that's allocating a certain portion of someone's time that's a current team member, or bringing someone in part-time to help quarterback that within the organization. But I haven't talked to an investor that says, if you stay focused on your effort and you have I'll call it a bet that you're playing on the side, that can yield, that return is asymmetric, right? You're spending a little bit of time and money to get a giant return, and that's non-dilutive. So that is something that we see investors generally gravitating towards. That speaks their language, and they like that. So that's a little bit about how to play this game, and then how to talk to your investors about it. Again, the last one is a virtuous circle, which is you build this self-sustaining cycle, this virtuous cycle, which is, again, you get a grant that's funded, you build a project from it, you introduce that product into a market space that has that unmet need, they adopt it, they buy it, you generate revenue from it, generate traction from it, gain some intellectual property, maybe some partnerships along the way. And what you've just done is turn that investment that the agency gave you into a success. that's why program officers are in their job. That's why the NIH SBIR program, that's why the DoD funds these programs, is that they want product in market. They want progress. It's not in market, it's material progression on a product's milestones. If you're doing that, they win, right? And that means the likelihood that you're going to get the next award is higher. They want, for a funding agency, a proven winner is less risky, but still delivers on the innovation and the translation mandate. So this works better for projects that are, call it 3 years and less, in length, from starting R&D to getting in the market. Research tools companies are a perfect play in this strategy. But I think therapeutic companies that take 8 years, 10 years, 12 years to go from start, from like an IND ready to approval, you can also play that strategy here, where you're making progressive milestones on your first lead program, and then make sure that story of your lead program turns into success in hitting its milestones, even if it didn't get approved. And then that's a track record that you can build into the next grant and contract you apply for. So those are the 6 kind of long-term funding strategies. Again, these take years to enact. They can take a long time to plan for. And we at Grant Engine, with our current clients, are starting to have more and more of these conversations about strategically thinking 1 year out, 3 years out, 5 years out, and starting to lay that groundwork about where we go with them and where they go. And we'll work with them as that makes sense mutually. But just starting to think about your company in a longer term way. So that's really what we have had time for. So I'm going to stop sharing. The rest of the slides are really a Grant Engine overview and summary, and I can hit a couple of key slides there if you're interested. So let me do that. We're right at 2:15. I'm going to take another 30 seconds to share really 2 slides, and then we'll put a bow on this really helpful webinar, really helpful for us webinar. So this is a quick snapshot of Grant Engine's product profile, and it really speaks to a spectrum of offerings that from left to right speak from a lower level of engagement, but I think to a higher level of engagement on the right, where from Grant Engine to you. All of these things are very valuable. So we have an AI writing tool that we have launched called Alpha, and we can onboard you. You can write your own grants. If you've got a new solicitation, we can tune up that template quite quickly. All the way on the right-hand side, which is our flagship offering, where we do the writing for your project, and we submit the grant on your behalf. And we need you to do meaningful and significant contributions at the beginning, mostly at the middle also, and certainly at the end. So the beginning, middle, and end, we need your significant contribution to make those a success. And we have a win rate that is 2x to 4x higher than the national average when we do that. We also have a mix in the middle, which is we have just grantsmanship and external review if you want that and you don't want to use Alpha. But we can also combine it, where we're offering some of the best things of our flagship, which is grantsmanship. That's a lead writer who has deep experience in your domain. We're adding external reviewers that are conflicts cleared, that sit on study section of your agency you're submitting to. And we have demonstrated that participation there also yields a win rate of 2x to 4x, and you get to write the grant as well. So that's the So I think whatever spectrum of engagement you would like, wherever you want to be on that spectrum of engagement with Grand Engine, we've got a solution for you. And we'd invite you to have that conversation with us. We always have a subject matter expert review. Right now, we're doing that even if it's alpha, where we receive your dossier of information and then spend 30 to 60 minutes to talk about competitiveness and readiness. And then lastly, we also have a post-award accounting and compliance. That keeps you inside the lines and also provides as much flexibility as possible. And that we've never had an audit issue, and it's very cost effective to engage with us with our accounting and compliance team. We're happy to talk about pricing. I'll give you the rough numbers here now, and really engaging with us with a subject matter expert call is really the best access to explore this and readiness. So alpha is under $200 a month. You can cut any time, and we take a nominal success fee there, very nominal. Alpha plus GR depends on the size of the grant, but it's in the 3 to 6K cash range, and then also a slightly higher, but also very nominal success fee. And then a flagship also varies on the size of grant from phase 1 SBIR or a small MTech pursuit on one side to, a phase 2 SBIR or ARPA H, but it varies considerably. And so that is in the thousands of dollars for the upfront, and then still a slightly higher success fee, but also I think still quite nominal. And one thing about our pricing that I really want to underline is that, and we do this intentionally, and we almost always, I'll say, and there are some exceptions, but they're not really relevant, but always in whatever we charge in our cash portion of our fees, we have a cost to serve that is always higher. And we only make a profit as a company on these projects when you get an award. And that is for some very intentional reasons, which is, number one, we know every dollar matters in your company. So we're trying to be as cost efficient for you as possible. We also want to be aligned with you, and we establish our economic model so that is the case, in that we're in it for you. We win economically when you get an award, and we want you to have an excellent experience as well. We want our team to have an excellent experience as well. And success happens when we work together. And so our economic model underpins that, where we win when you win financially. And that's also true, in the ethos of working together. And so if we're giving you advice, we want you to listen to it, because we're all trying to get to the same place, which is to get an award for you. And that's, and of course we'll listen to you. And so that's how we structure our engagements, so that we're in it together in a real dollars and way, because we think that makes sense. So that's a little bit of our philosophy, and how we work. So let me stop there. We're only 21 minutes over. Thanks everyone for staying with us. We will, again, as mentioned, put the slides on the landing page that you'll all get another quick email. But if you registered on Grant Engine's landing page, we'll make that available to you if you just go to grantengine.com, or if you registered there, you can go there, and soon we'll have, instead of registering, you can download the slides. And I'm sure MTech will make that available as well. So thank you very much. An honor to be with you. And again, this is a tough environment. So be strong. We're stronger together. Advocate to your elected officials, and let's do this together. We're stronger together. So thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day and week. And we'll announce the March webinar soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.